You know that feeling, when you step into a room and even before anyone speaks, you already know the atmosphere has shifted. The air feels thicker, like it's carrying invisible weight. A friend forces a smile, but you can sense the ache hidden behind it. A stranger's voice trembles, and without meaning to, your chest trembles with them. Someone sits quietly in the corner, and though they say nothing, you can feel their loneliness pulsing like an echo in your bones. Others glance past, too busy, too distracted to notice, but you cannot ignore it. You never could. This is what it means to walk through the world as an empath. To carry a heart that is wide open, a body that absorbs the unspoken, and a spirit that cannot stop reaching out even when it hurts. Most people don't see this. They think you are simply kind, maybe a little sensitive, maybe too emotional. What they don't see is that every day you live with a second layer of reality, one that weighs on you even when your own life seems calm. The burden of it is quiet but constant. It begins early, long before you could name it. Maybe as a child you were the one who noticed the shift in your parents' voices before an argument began. You felt the storm long before the thunder. Maybe you were the one who held back your own tears so you could soothe someone else's. Or the one who tried to bring laughter to lighten the heaviness around you. Slowly, without realizing, you learned to put your own needs second. You learned that to keep peace, you had to carry what no one else would. And so you grew into someone who sees what others miss. Someone who notices the fracture in another person's smile, who hears the truth in silence, who senses what lingers in the spaces between words. But what no one told you is that such awareness comes at a cost. Because while you are reading others, who is reading you? While you are carrying everyone's burdens, who is helping you lay yours down? This is where the empath's journey becomes heavy. You go through life pouring from yourself endlessly, often without realizing that your own well is running dry. Friends call you because you listen so deeply. Strangers feel safe unloading their troubles because they sense your compassion. Even people who have never earned your trust often come to you, because your heart is open in a way they cannot explain. And while you give, while you comfort, while you absorb, you quietly fade. You become exhausted but cannot name why. You feel heavy but cannot tell where the heaviness begins. Carl Jung once wrote about the shadow, the unseen part of ourselves that we try to hide or deny. For empaths, the shadow is not about cruelty or coldness. It is the exhaustion you try to ignore. It is the frustration you swallow when no one notices your sacrifices. It is the silent anger that whispers in the back of your mind, "Why is it always me?" But instead of listening, you silence that voice. You tell yourself it is selfish to feel this way. You keep giving, keep absorbing, keep carrying. And slowly, the shadow grows heavier, not because you are weak, but because you were never taught how to set it down. Here lies the hidden truth. Sensitivity is not your weakness. It was never meant to break you. It is your gift, your compass, your way of seeing beauty in places others overlook. The problem is not that you feel too much, it is that you have been taught to carry what is not yours. You mistake absorbing pain for helping, when in reality, you are only filling yourself with weight that was never meant to live inside you. So the journey of the empath is not about shutting down your heart, not about becoming harder or colder. It is about finally learning where you end and where someone else begins. It is about recognizing that every emotion you pick up is not an invitation to hold it forever. It is about seeing that compassion does not mean self-erasure. Imagine for a moment, a life where you still notice the sadness in someone's eyes, but instead of drowning in it, you offer kindness and let it pass through you. Imagine hearing someone's anger but not letting it linger in your chest. Imagine giving comfort without losing yourself in the process. This is not selfishness. This is balance. And balance is the beginning of peace. And so the first step is recognition. To finally admit to yourself that the heaviness you feel is not always your own. That many of the emotions you wrestle with were never born in your heart. That much of the sorrow you carry belongs to others, not to you. Once you see this clearly, something shifts. You begin to separate the voices in your head. You begin to ask, if this sadness is theirs, then who am I without it? If this weight was never mine, then what does my own soul truly feel? This is where your journey begins. Not in carrying more, not in giving endlessly, but in discovering the self that has been buried beneath the noise of others. The self that is not defined by someone else's mood. The self that does not exist only to soothe or to fix. The self that longs quietly but firmly for peace. And it is here, in this pause, in this moment of clarity, that you finally begin to see your sensitivity is not a curse. It is a doorway. And it can lead you somewhere new, if you dare to step through. When you begin to notice how much of your heaviness is borrowed, something inside you stirs. At first it feels strange, even unsettling, to imagine that not every sadness in your heart is truly yours. You may feel guilty, as if by letting go you are abandoning people who rely on you. You may wonder, if I stop carrying this, will they still feel cared for? And this is where the old patterns try to pull you back. Because for so long, you have been told, sometimes directly, sometimes silently, that your worth is in your giving. That your softness only matters when it eases someone else's pain. But here is the truth. Love is not measured by how much you sacrifice. Compassion is not proven by how deeply you allow yourself to bleed. Real compassion has space for you too. And part of your journey is unlearning the belief that you are only valuable when you are pouring yourself empty. This is the hard part for many empaths. Because stepping back feels unnatural. Saying no feels cruel. Taking time for yourself feels like abandonment. Yet every time you ignore your own needs, you become further removed from who you are. And slowly, the kindness you give begins to come not from abundance, but from depletion. It is like pouring water from a cracked jar, watching yourself run dry while hoping no one notices how much you are losing. Carl Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. For you, that means peeling away the layers of expectation that have covered your spirit. It means realizing that you are not simply a mirror for the suffering around you, you are a soul with its own rhythm, its own desires, its own voice. And if you never stop to listen to that voice, you will spend your life speaking only in the echoes of others. So how do you begin to listen? The first step is silence. Not the silence of suppression, but the silence of space. Imagine stepping outside, far from the noise of others, and allowing yourself to simply feel what remains. At first it may be confusing. You may ask yourself, is this feeling mine, or did I pick it up from someone else? It may take time, because your heart has been crowded for years. But slowly, gently, you begin to notice that underneath the layers of borrowed emotions, there is something steady. A quiet pulse that belongs only to you. That is your center. That is your true self calling you home. Boundaries are the next step, and for an empath, boundaries can feel like betrayal. But they are not walls to keep love out. They are rivers that allow your love to flow without flooding your soul. A boundary is saying, I can listen, but I cannot carry this for you. A boundary is saying, I care, but I need time to rest. A boundary is saying, I am here, but I am not your vessel. At first, these words may feel harsh. You may feel guilt pressing against your chest like a stone. But with practice, you realize that every boundary is also an act of love, for yourself, and for others too. Because when you are not drowning, your compassion flows more freely. When you are not exhausted, your kindness carries more strength. Think of it like breathing. If you were trapped in a room with no air, you could not help anyone else. You would suffocate before you could offer a hand. Boundaries are the air you breathe. They keep you alive, so your presence can remain steady, clear, and real. Without them, you are only a shadow of yourself, offering fragments instead of wholeness. As you walk deeper into this journey, you begin to notice how differently the world feels when you are not absorbing everything. The same crowded room that once overwhelmed you now becomes manageable. You still sense the emotions, but they no longer take root in your chest. You begin to feel them flow through you instead of into you. And in this flow, there is freedom. You realize you can love someone without holding their sorrow. You can care deeply without being consumed. You can offer light without burning yourself out. This is the quiet transformation that many empaths never reach, because they are too busy proving their love through sacrifice. But when you finally see it, when you finally taste the peace of holding space without carrying weight, something inside you begins to heal. You realize that your gift was never meant to crush you. It was meant to show you the hidden beauty of human connection, without demanding your destruction in return. And so the path unfolds, slowly, gently, like a stream cutting through stone. Each day you learn to release a little more of what does not belong to you. Each day you notice the difference between your own feelings and the borrowed storms of others. Each day you reclaim another piece of yourself. And with each piece, your peace grows. Because the truth is, peace for the empath is not found in escaping the world. It is found in learning how to remain open without being broken. It is found in remembering that your gift is not in how much you absorb, but in how deeply you see. And when you see without drowning, you finally discover that being an empath is not just a burden, it is a profound, rare, and sacred way of moving through this demanding world. There comes a point on the empath's path where the weight becomes unbearable. It is not sudden. It creeps in quietly, like fog rolling over a familiar landscape, until one day you wake up and realize you cannot tell where your emotions end and someone else's begin. You notice that your shoulders ache even when you have done no heavy lifting. Your mind feels crowded even when you are alone. Your chest tightens as if bracing for storms that never come. And you begin to wonder, is this simply who I am, or is there another way to live? This is the breaking point, and though it feels painful, it is not your undoing. It is your threshold. Because every journey of transformation begins with a moment of reckoning. A moment when you realize that continuing as you have always done will only hollow you out further. You cannot keep saying yes when every cell in your body is begging for rest. You cannot keep silencing your own heart just to carry the noise of others. You cannot keep mistaking depletion for love. And though part of you resists, another part begins to whisper, enough. The world has always praised you for your selflessness, for your ability to hold space, for your uncanny way of understanding. But what the world rarely tells you is that empathy without boundaries is self-abandonment. Jung wrote that the soul longs for wholeness, not perfection. And for you, wholeness cannot exist until you begin to weave yourself back into the fabric of your own life. Until you stop treating your needs as an afterthought and begin honoring them as sacred. This is where the journey deepens. You begin to ask questions you have never dared to ask. Who am I apart from the roles I play in other people's lives? Who am I when I am not the healer, the listener, the peacemaker? Who am I when I stop carrying what is not mine? These questions feel both liberating and terrifying, because for so long your identity has been tied to how much you give. Without that, you fear you might vanish. But the truth is, you will not vanish. You will emerge. To find yourself, you must begin to create space. Space from the constant noise, space from the endless requests, space from the invisible threads tugging at your heart. At first this feels unnatural. You are so used to rushing in, to soothing, to absorbing. Stepping back feels like cruelty. But slowly you discover that space is not absence. It is presence. Presence with yourself, with your own inner landscape, with the voice that has been buried under everyone else's pain. In the silence, you begin to notice your own patterns. You realize how often you take responsibility for what was never yours. You notice how quickly you apologize even when you have done nothing wrong. You see how much of your energy is spent anticipating the emotions of others, as if by doing so you could prevent them from ever feeling pain. And when you see this clearly, you also begin to see the truth. You were never meant to protect the world from suffering. You were only meant to meet the world with compassion, not to carry it on your back. This is where the work of shadow begins. Jung described the shadow as the parts of ourselves we avoid, but for you, the shadow is not darkness in the usual sense. It is your unspoken needs, your hidden desires, your silenced anger, your deep exhaustion. For years, you have shoved these parts aside because they felt selfish or unkind. But the shadow never disappears, it waits. It waits for you to finally turn toward it, to acknowledge that even your most uncomfortable feelings are messengers. Anger is telling you where your boundaries have been crossed. Exhaustion is telling you where you have overgiven. Resentment is telling you where you have betrayed yourself. These are not signs of failure. They are signals pointing you back to balance. When you finally listen, something begins to shift. You realize that honoring your needs is not the opposite of love, It is the foundation of it. Because without honoring yourself, every act of compassion becomes laced with bitterness. Without honoring yourself, every yes carries the quiet resentment of another self-betrayal. But when you begin to honor yourself, love flows more purely. It is no longer sacrifice. It is no longer depletion. It is a steady flame, warm and enduring, instead of a wildfire burning you out. Boundaries, once terrifying, begin to feel like freedom. You discover that saying no does not end connection, it strengthens it. Because when you are not pretending, when you are not suppressing, when you are not overextending, your presence becomes more genuine. People may resist at first, especially those who have grown accustomed to your endless giving. They may question, they may push, they may accuse. But in time, those who truly care for you will adjust. They will learn to meet you, not just take from you. And those who cannot adjust were never truly connected to you. They were only connected to what you gave them. As you walk further down this path, you begin to notice a new kind of peace entering your life. It is subtle at first. A morning where you wake and your chest feels lighter. An evening where you realize you are not carrying anyone else's anger. A moment of laughter that feels untainted by guilt. These are the small markers of change, the whispers of balance returning. And as they accumulate, you begin to realize that peace is not something distant or unattainable. It has been waiting within you all along, hidden beneath the weight you carried. And then something beautiful happens. You begin to see your gift differently. Empathy is no longer a cage. It is no longer a curse that drains you. It becomes a lens, a way of seeing the hidden beauty in others, a way of connecting deeply without losing yourself. You notice the light in people as vividly as you once noticed their pain. You begin to sense joy, hope, resilience with the same clarity you once sensed sorrow. And this shifts everything. Because now your gift does not drown you, it uplifts you. You are no longer a sponge, soaking in the world until you are heavy. You are a mirror, reflecting truth back to those who need it. You are a lantern, shining light without dimming your own flame. You are still an empath, still sensitive, still open, but now you are whole. And in that wholeness, peace is no longer just a dream. It is your way of being. This is the empath's journey. Not a journey of escape, not a journey of shutting down, but a journey of remembering. Remembering that you are not here to carry everything. Remembering that you are not here to abandon yourself. Remembering that your gift is not in suffering, but in seeing. And when you remember this fully, when you embody it with every breath, you finally find what you have been searching for all along, peace in a demanding world. As the empath steps further into this awakening, the journey begins to feel less like survival and more like a reclamation. For years, life was a series of reactions, absorbing, adjusting, softening edges, bending to fit the moods of others. Now, slowly but surely, it begins to shift. No longer a leaf carried by every wind, you start to feel like a tree, rooted, steady, unshaken. And though the winds still blow, though the noise of the world still rages, you notice something profound. You do not collapse with every storm. You bend, you sway, but you remain whole. This realization is not just mental. It lives in the body. You begin to notice how your breath changes when you are no longer weighed down. The shallow, anxious breaths that once governed your days are replaced with a deeper rhythm. You catch yourself inhaling without fear, exhaling without guilt. Your nervous system, once perpetually on high alert, begins to soften. This is not coincidence. It is your spirit recalibrating, your body remembering safety after years of carrying danger that was never yours. From here, another layer of transformation unfolds. You begin to discover the power of choice, something that once seemed impossible. Before, you believed empathy meant always saying yes, always entering into the storm of others. But now you see differently. You realize that empathy is not obligation. It is a capacity. And like all capacities, it can be directed with wisdom. You can choose where to place your heart, where to extend your energy, where to stand firm. This is not coldness. This is sovereignty. Jung wrote that wholeness is the integration of opposites. For you, this means learning that love and boundary are not enemies. Sensitivity and strength are not contradictions. You can feel deeply and still remain steady. You can give generously and still protect yourself. You can open your heart without losing your ground. This integration is the true alchemy of your journey, the moment where the extremes dissolve and balance is born. In daily life, this integration begins to show itself in subtle ways. You notice when someone's words carry manipulation, where before you would have swallowed them without question. You sense when guilt is being used as a leash, and for the first time, you do not tighten it around your own neck. You recognize when an environment drains you, and instead of enduring, you choose to leave. Each small choice affirms that you are no longer abandoning yourself. Each decision becomes a brick in the foundation of your peace. And as this foundation grows, so does your vision. Empathy, when no longer distorted by self-betrayal, becomes clarity. You begin to see not only the pain in others, but also the unspoken truths they cannot name. You see the masks they wear, the armor they carry, the fear behind their anger, the longing beneath their bravado. But now, you do not confuse these truths with your responsibility. You see them with compassion, but you no longer drown in them. You understand that compassion is not about dissolving into another's suffering, it is about holding space without disappearing yourself. This shift transforms your relationships. Those who once lean on you without limit may grow restless, but those who truly value you will meet you with new respect. They will begin to see that your boundaries do not diminish your love, they sharpen it. Your no makes your yes more meaningful. Your refusal to carry what is not yours creates room for authentic connection. And as your relationships reshape, you notice something you never felt before. You feel lighter, freer, more yourself than you ever thought possible. But peace is not found only in relationships. It begins to seep into every corner of your life. You notice it in solitude. Moments once filled with loneliness now feel nourishing. You notice it in your work, where once you carried the emotional burdens of colleagues, now you hold your center and conserve your strength. You notice it in your inner dialogue, where once you scolded yourself for not doing enough, now you speak gently, reminding yourself that rest is not weakness but wisdom. And then comes the deeper gift. In the stillness you now allow, your creativity awakens. For so long, your energy was consumed by managing others. With that weight lifted, your imagination begins to flourish. Ideas that once felt buried begin to surface. You find yourself drawn to create, to write, to paint, to build, to move, to sing. The soul, once suffocated by exhaustion, begins to breathe, and with that breath, your natural gifts pour forth. This is the part no one tells you about, that when empaths reclaim their boundaries, they do not lose their gift. They amplify it. They redirect it into creation instead of depletion. And in this creation, you discover joy again. Real joy. Not borrowed joy, not joy through someone else's smile, but joy that rises from within. A sunrise that fills you with awe. A piece of music that vibrates through your body. A quiet evening where you feel, perhaps for the first time in years, completely whole. These are not small moments. They are revelations. They remind you that peace is not the absence of feeling. Peace is the presence of alignment. This is the full circle of the empath's journey. You began as a soul drowning in the currents of others, believing that this was your fate. You broke beneath the weight, but instead of staying broken, you chose to awaken. You faced the shadow, you learned the language of boundaries, you reclaimed the parts of yourself you once abandoned. And in doing so, you transformed empathy from a wound into a gift, from a burden into a power, from a curse into a calling. Now, as you stand rooted in your own being, you carry a different kind of strength. Not the brittle strength of walls, but the fluid strength of rivers. Not the cold strength of distance, but the warm strength of presence. You do not need to shut down to protect yourself. You do not need to carry to prove your love. You live now in balance, and from that balance, peace flows into every part of your life. This peace is not fragile. It does not vanish with the chaos of the world. It endures because it lives within you. And once you have tasted it, once you have built it, once you have embodied it, you realize this is what you were searching for all along. Not to escape your sensitivity, but to reclaim it as strength. Not to erase your empathy, but to let it shine without destroying you. This is the journey. This is the gift. This is the moment you finally become whole. There comes a moment on this path where you realize you are no longer the same person who once carried the entire weight of the world on trembling shoulders. The empath who once dissolved into every room, who lived through the moods of others, who mistook self-sacrifice for love, begins to fade like a shadow at dawn. In their place rises someone new, someone familiar yet different, someone who has walked through fire and learned not only to survive it, but to carry light from its flames. This transformation does not happen overnight. It is not the story of a sudden awakening, but of countless small moments stitched together like threads in a tapestry. The day you said no and did not collapse into guilt. The afternoon you walked away from someone who drained you, even though your heart ached to stay. The evening you allowed yourself to rest without earning it first. The morning you realized that peace, real peace, does not need justification. These quiet victories, invisible to the outside world, are what build the new life of an empath who has finally learned to choose themselves. And yet, choosing yourself as an empath feels radical, almost rebellious. Because the world has conditioned you to believe that your worth comes from what you give, how much you absorb, how endlessly you bend. Breaking free from that illusion feels like breaking chains you never realized were shackled around your spirit. At first, the freedom feels uncomfortable, even frightening. You may hear the old voices in your head whispering that you are selfish, that you are abandoning others, that you are cold. But with time, those voices quiet. They lose their grip, because deep down you begin to feel something stronger than guilt. You begin to feel truth. And truth is liberating. It tells you that you were never meant to be a sponge for the world's pain. You were never meant to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You were never meant to betray your own soul in order to be loved. Your sensitivity was never the problem. It was the lack of boundaries, the absence of understanding, the distortion of what empathy truly is. When this realization fully sinks in, something shifts forever. You no longer see your gift as a curse. You see it as power, but power guided by wisdom. This wisdom brings clarity about relationships. The empath who has awakened no longer tolerates being drained. You begin to notice patterns that once kept you trapped. The friend who only calls in crisis, the partner who relies on you for emotional labor but gives nothing in return, the colleague who uses your kindness as a ladder. Before, you would have endured it all, convincing yourself it was love, loyalty, or duty. Now you see it clearly for what it is, imbalance. And slowly, steadily, you begin to release what does not honor your spirit. At first, this pruning of relationships may leave you feeling bare, like a tree in winter. But in that stillness, something beautiful happens. Space opens. And into that space, new connections arrive, connections that are not built on your exhaustion, but on mutual respect. People who cherish your sensitivity instead of exploiting it. Friends who listen as deeply as you do. Partners who love you not because you carry their pain, but because you share their joy. This is the reward of boundaries, not loneliness, but alignment. Not emptiness, but nourishment. Beyond relationships, the empath's journey touches something even deeper, the rediscovery of the self. For so long, your identity was tangled in the needs of others. Without realizing it, you became a mirror, reflecting back the emotions of everyone around you. But when the mirror clears, when you finally separate your reflection from theirs, you encounter someone you may not have known in years, your true self. This self is not fragile, not invisible, not defined by constant sacrifice. This self has dreams, passions, desires, and a voice of its own. It is here that the empath's gift transforms into its highest form. Because empathy is not meant to erase you. It is meant to guide you into deeper connection with life. When balanced, it becomes vision. It allows you to see the world not only as it is, but as it could be. It helps you understand people not only in their masks, but in their essence. It gives you the ability to create bridges, to bring healing, to inspire hope. But now you share this gift from overflow, not from depletion. You give without emptying yourself. You shine without burning out. Carl Jung spoke often about individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating every part of yourself, light and shadow, strength and vulnerability. For the empath, Individuation is not about discarding sensitivity, but about weaving it into the fabric of a full self. The shadow is not the gift itself, but the distortion of it, the places where you lost yourself, the wounds of overgiving, the patterns of self-erasure. By facing these shadows, by acknowledging the pain of always carrying too much, you release their hold. And in that release, the light of your true gift shines unobstructed. As you walk further into this wholeness, life itself begins to change. The world feels different when you are no longer drowning in it. Nature speaks louder, the rustle of leaves feels alive, the sound of rain calms you in ways it never did before, the silence of solitude feels rich instead of empty. Creativity blossoms, words flow, colors speak, melodies rise, ideas spark. Energy that was once consumed by constant emotional labor now returns to you, fueling your purpose, your passions, your unique way of moving through the world. And perhaps the most beautiful shift of all is joy. Real joy. Not fleeting moments borrowed from others, not temporary relief when everyone else is okay, but a deep well within you. Joy in stillness. Joy in presence. Joy in simply existing as yourself, without apology. This joy is not loud, not performative. It is quiet, steady, unshakable. It becomes the ground beneath your feet, the breath in your lungs, the warmth in your chest. And once you feel it, you realize that peace was never about escaping the world. It was about finding home within yourself. This is the empath's journey. From burden to balance. From erasure to selfhood. From drowning to peace. You are not here to carry the world. You are here to walk in it with open eyes, open heart, and steady ground. You are here to share your gift without losing yourself, to love without abandoning yourself, to feel without breaking yourself. This is the path. This is the transformation. This is the freedom that waits on the other side of choosing yourself. And as you stand here now, on this new ground, you may finally whisper the words you have waited a lifetime to say. I am sensitive, and I am strong. I am open, and I am whole. I am an empath, and I am free.